All right. Welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars. I hope all the listeners out there are having a fantastic day. But the topic I'll be covering is a little bit less than fantastic. Nothing negative, but it's just kind of there. I, of course, am talking about Big E's WWE Championship run and his singles run in the 2020s in general. For me, it's one of those what could have been type of title runs because Big E was the right guy at the wrong place at the wrong time. And allow me to explain. But before we get into Big E winning the WWE Championship, we gotta go a little bit further back. Let's get some prologue action here, shall we? Big E was a part of WWE's developmental system, FCW, before it rebranded to NXT, became NXT champion, then got called up to the main roster as Dolph Ziggler's bodyguard, accidentally punched AJ Lee in the chest that one time, and then he broke off into his own and eventually won the Intercontinental Championship. And usually when you win the Intercontinental Championship, it's a little, hey, here you go. We're thinking about you breaking through that glass ceiling to the next level. But unfortunately, during this time, the Intercontinental Championship wasn't viewed as it once was prestige-wise. It was viewed as, hey, this guy's not really doing anything. We still think he has potential to be a future star, so this at least gives him something to do. But in that, you wouldn't really get any bonus for being the Intercontinental Championship or the United States Champion during this time in 2013, 2014. You were just a guy on the roster, essentially. Big E held this championship from, I want to say, October, November, all the way till May. And I can't remember a single thing that happened during the entire run. There weren't any memorable promos, there weren't really any memorable feuds or matches, and that's not to fault him. His character at this time was just rather dry. He was just a big, strong guy who you cheer for because he's a big, strong guy. That's it. And there was a lot more meat on the bone that he could develop character-wise. And for whatever reason, it wasn't clicking with the audience. That's when Xavier Woods came up with the idea of a 3-person team, which would later be called The New Day, with Big E and eventually Kofi Kingston, and they would work on their chemistry as a trio, which we didn't really see at that time except for The Shield. And they were coming in as babyfaces, good guys, with a gospel preacher gimmick, which the crowd didn't really get into. And then eventually they turned more devious, more villainous, and then became the New Day we know and love with the unicorns, with the pancakes, with the boxes of cereal, with the ice cream pops, etc., etc. So for the next 6 years, Big E was in this group tag team scenario. The New Day never really branched off into single stuff until Kofi Kingston went on and won the WWE Championship. You could also listen to Kofi Kingston's WWE Championship rise and fall in the episode Kofi Mania in our archives. But back to Big E. So during the pandemic era, Xavier Woods was out hurt, Kofi Kingston was out hurt, and this was the time for Big E to branch off into a singles run, which a lot of people were clamoring for. A lot of people were even suggesting that Big E turn on his New Day brethren to revamp his character or be that stoic, serious guy, because Big E was a big, goofy guy. And he showed that personality that he didn't show in his initial run with WWE pre-New Day. And I thought that was not the right way for Big E to present himself. Sure, you could have a serious side, but if you strip away what brought you to the dance, it's not going to feel the same. And at the time, it was tough to gauge how Big E's singles run is going because there were no audience members in the crowd at that time due to COVID. So it's pretty much trying to figure out what they're saying online, if it's working, and Big E's experimenting with his new solo character. Like, I remember he rolled down the ring one time, like like he did the stop, drop, and roll. And I thought it was entertaining, but if you're trying to build yourself up to the next level, I could see why he stopped doing it. Eventually, Big E would have a feud with Sheamus. He would come out on top with that, and it was a good start, a good baseline for how Big E's singles run is going to go. Then came the WWE draft, and in this WWE draft, they made the choice of splitting up the New Day. So, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods went to Raw, and Big E stayed on SmackDown. I kind of get the logic in this, but I also kind of don't. So, you have a group that's very popular in the New Day, and can be proved to be successful branching out to other stuffs, like Kofi Kingston's WWE Championship reign, while Xavier Woods and Big E went to the tag team stuff. I could also see how WWE might think that's a distraction. So let's say if Big E's in a singles storyline, narratively, if the New Day isn't out helping him, how is that going to look at their partnership? Like if Sheamus attacks Big E from behind and the New Day are nowhere to be found, how is that narratively going to help Big E break out on his own when he's still being tied with the New Day stuff? So I understand that aspect, but at the same time, I don't think it would have harmed Big E's stories going forward. It's just a matter of creating A stories and B stories when it comes to the New Day. So Big E can go off and do this when New Day's doing that, and then every once in a while they could join forces or what have you. It's just, they limited their ideas on storytelling, splitting up the New Day, in my opinion. So Big E's on his own. He has new music, he has a new entrance. Essentially, they were soft rebooting the Big E character. They're imagining Big E with his newfound personality from the New Day, but in a more serious style in the singles division. So Big E goes through Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship and wins on Christmas Day in 2020. They had a fun little segment beforehand. Sami Zayn was hosting his own awards, but instead of the Slammy Awards, it was the Sammy Awards. And the fix was in. Sammy was rigging all these awards to give himself, but Big E put his name down on one of the recipients of the awards, and he was like, I'd like to thank my mom, my dad for the Sammy Award. Very entertaining stuff. And it was a good continuation of building Big E as this single star. He would then transition to a feud with Apollo Crews, and Apollo Crews wasn't really doing much of note at that time. He was the United States champion, but then he got drafted to SmackDown, and he wasn't really doing anything. And a nice character change for him was turning on Big E, becoming a villain, that heel, and embracing his Nigerian roots, which led to, at WrestleMania, the Nigerian drum fight, or a street fight they just had drums set up around the ring. And Big E got a big time entrance. He had the singer Wale sing him to the ring. And they usually don't do that unless they see something in you to have a live concert performance for your entrance theme at WrestleMania. So that was a cool moment for Big E. The match itself was short. It was just kind of there, and it ended with Apollo Crews' associate, Commander Aziz, assisting Apollo Crews in winning the Intercontinental Championship. Big E would stay in the Intercontinental Championship scene, and in a fatal four-way match where Apollo Crews was defending his Intercontinental Championship, it was in the main event, Big E was included in this, but as Big E looked to regain that Intercontinental Championship, Aleister Black, who was doing this character, the Dark Father, and he had at least a month worth of vignettes of just hyping up this new dark side character, cost Big E the championship match. And I was pretty hooked on it because I found Aleister Black to be an interesting character, and this is his first time, I believe, in WWE attempting a dark villain character. And I was excited to see what was next. And then WWE released Aleister Black from his contract, so we never got a proper reason or finality of why Aleister Black attacked Big E. And it just kind of left Big E in this weird limbo. Big E is still being kept strong. The only time he would lose is from interference with other wrestlers or competitors. So he's not losing clean as a sheet. They're treating Big E like a big deal, like a big threat, but with minimal follow-up from that. It just kind of boggles my mind that they greenlit Aleister Black to be Big E's next kryptonite, what have you, and then they just sort of release him from the contract. And now it leaves Big E with almost nothing to do. And he was kind of playing this waiting game of, all right, guess Money in the Bank's coming up in a couple weeks. Guess I could do that. So he qualifies for Money in the Bank, and he wins. He wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, which is a huge accolade for him at this time. When somebody wins Money in the Bank, they win the contract for a world title shot any place, anytime, anywhere for up to a year. And this was huge for Big E because this would be his first attempt to challenge for a world championship. And usually when they give a performer Money in the Bank, they see something in you. They see you as the next champion, not necessarily the next person to be the face of the company, but the next guy to hold that championship, hopefully for a decent amount of time. And I thought that Big E might eventually cash in on Roman Reigns, the Universal Champion at that time, and still is currently. Silly me. And they were teasing it on the television show too, with Paul Heyman cutting a promo on Roman Reigns' next opponent. I think it was John Cena or Finn Balor during that time. And it was really entertaining to me because Paul Heyman would be cutting this serious promo on, this person doesn't deserve to challenge Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. And then you had Big E, who was disguising himself as a janitor, and he was just laughing and shoving the Money in the Bank briefcase in Paul Heyman's face. I don't know. I just thought it was really entertaining that Big E's just cackling and just saying, I'm going to cash in on your boy. But he doesn't cash in on his boy. In fact, while Big E is holding the Money in the Bank contract, he isn't really doing much of anything, which is a similar story to when people hold on to Money in the Bank. They aren't really involved in storylines that much because they have this golden ticket that they're carrying around. There hasn't been a Money in the Bank holder where you're invested in the story as much because all you're thinking when you see the Money in the Bank contract holder is, all right, when they're cashing in, which makes stories around them during that time kind of moot. It's a moo point. Just moo. Friends reference for anybody who doesn't watch it. So Big E feuds with bum Baron Corbin and beats him at SummerSlam. And then something interesting happens. Now, this was during the time where AEW was hot on WWE's heels. And they won the demo 1 week, not long after SummerSlam. And I'm bringing this up because it's going to kind of make sense what happens later. So the main story on WWE Raw, moving over to the Raw brand, was Bobby Lashley and Randy Orton. Randy Orton was teaming with Matt Riddle as RK Bro. Bobby Lashley was the reigning, defending WWE Champion. And they announced at the next pay-per-view Extreme Rules that Bobby Lashley is going to defend his championship against Randy Orton. To heat up this story, Bobby Lashley and MVP win a tag team turmoil, a tag team gauntlet match, in order to be the number one contenders to RK Bros Raw Tag Team Championships. And then, this is my own theory, you could agree with it or not, since AEW beat WWE in the demos that week, they kind of fast forwarded to next week. And then next week on Raw, it's going to be WWE Champion Bobby Lashley defending against Randy Orton. Kind of hot-shotting that program from the pay-per-view into the next week on Raw. But then earlier in the day, Big E goes on Twitter, and he says, I will be at Monday Night Raw tonight, and I have full intention of cashing in the Money in the Bank contract for the WWE Championship. To say all of this was rushed is a bit of an understatement. There was a way to get Big E to Raw. At the same pay-per-view Big E won the Money in the Bank contract, Bobby Lashley destroyed Kofi Kingston. Then the next night, he destroyed Xavier Woods. So there was plenty of ammunition for Big E to cash in on Bobby Lashley. The problem is, since Big E was on a separate brand from Bobby Lashley, we didn't really see his reactions to those events. And this is where splitting up the New Day is a con and not a pro. And when Big E announced on Twitter that he was cashing on the WWE Championship, all those teases that Big E had against Paul Heyman about cashing in on Roman Reigns felt pointless. In my head, I'm like, why are you even teasing something that's probably not going to happen? I don't know. I don't know why I get my hopes up so much. It's just food for thought. So Big E appears on Raw, and he's saying, I'm going to cash in on either Bobby Lashley or Randy Orton at the end of tonight's show. So stay tuned for that. And before I forget, another reason why WWE probably pushed this forward than Randy Orton and Bobby Lashley at Extreme Rules is that this was around NFL season, so WWE's ratings and demos are going to be destroyed by the NFL demos and ratings. So they're trying to retain viewers any way they can. Because this was around September, I believe. So Bobby Lashley defeats Randy Orton. Bobby Lashley is selling that he has a knee injury, so he's holding his knee. He's stumbling up the ring steps. And then you hear Big E's music, and Big E just charges down, and he's cashing in Money in the Bank. We got a title match on our hands, and we cut to commercial. Which is a pretty decent hook, you know? Somebody's cashing in Money in the Bank. Go to the commercial. All right, we're all hyped up. Make sure you call your friends. Tell everybody, all right, Big E's cashing in. We might have a new WWE champion. So we get back from commercial break, and Bobby Lashley is yelling at the ref. He's like, my knee, I can't go. Big E goes up to him, smacks the taste out of his mouth. Bobby Lashley gets those crazy eyes, and he says, ring the effing bell. The bell rings. We have a good short little match. Bobby Lashley hits the spear on Big E. Big E kicks out. And then Big E hits the big ending. And the 1, 2, 3. Big E is your new WWE champion. And I was a fan of this angle. I was a fan of Big E before he became WWE champion, and I thought, you know what, this was well deserved. He went through the trials and tribulations, he was brought up with not much to do, he made the most out of every opportunity he got with the New Day when he split off from the New Day, and now it's his time to shine in the spotlight. Since Big E won the WWE Championship on Raw, he then moves from the SmackDown brand to the Raw brand. And they set up something on SmackDown where it's going to be the Bloodline, Roman Reigns, and the Usos against all 3 members of the New Day since they're all on the Raw roster now. During that match, Bobby Lashley interferes and costs the New Day the match with Roman Reigns and the Usos. and also some hints, some signs of his own faction reforming, being the Hurt Business of Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander. And putting a little sidebar here, the Hurt Business was a faction between MVP, Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and Cedric Alexander. But MVP and Bobby Lashley kicked Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander out during his feud with Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania, and now it seems like everything's hunky-dory with the Hurt Business, even though it's not. It's very confusing. I will be doing a Hurt Business podcast in the near future. So Bobby Lashley cost the New Day the match against Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, and as a result of this, there is a triple threat match scheduled later tonight with Roman Reigns taking on Bobby Lashley and Big E. During the match, Big E gets taken out, and Roman Reigns pins Bobby Lashley to win this triple threat showcase match. Now, unfortunately, this is what sets the tone for Big E's WWE Championship reign. It's his first official night on Monday Night Raw. He is essentially the main character of this brand. And in his first night, he loses not one, but 2 matches since winning the WWE Championship. Not a strong start for Big E. And when you see someone losing back-to-back matches in the same night, it puts the perception in the crowd's mind that, is this really the guy we're supposed to rally behind? It just started Big E's run on an off note. At least now, WWE can start to focus and cultivate the Raw roster around Big E and his title run. Except the WWE draft is later announced, which is putting pretty much every plan on hold. Because when the WWE draft is announced, we're not sure what Big E is going to do because there isn't a solidified Raw roster at the current moment. He does have a decent feud with Drew McIntyre. Both good guys, they play the game, oh, can they coexist in the tag team match? And that's pretty much what the rivalry is based off of. They have a match at Crown Jewel. Very good match. Underrated match. And I implore all of you to go watch it. It's just 2 big bulls just going at it. So the WWE draft comes again. And once again, the New Day is split up with Big E staying on Raw and Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods going to SmackDown. So now Big E is all by himself again, so hopefully WWE is all in on making Big E the star that he should be. Once the rosters are solidified, Seth Rollins wins a fatal 4-way ladder match to become the number 1 contender for Big E's WWE Championship. Unfortunately, we're not told when that match is happening. And now, even though the draft just happened, we're going to Survivor Series where the theme is Raw versus SmackDown. I don't understand why people will have brand loyalty when they just got drafted to that brand, but what have you. And the build-up is Roman Reigns versus Big E. But the problem is, there hasn't been a serious feud that's growing between the two. If anything, it's Xavier Woods that's feuding with Roman Reigns. So just to back up a little bit more, Xavier Woods wins the King of the Ring at Crown Jewel, and he has been going by King Woods, but Roman Reigns, being the Universal Champion, says there's only one king on SmackDown. So him and the Usos beat King Woods up and steal his King of the Ring crown. They do all these sort of things, like they bully Xavier Woods, they take his crown, Roman steps on it, completely disrespecting Xavier Woods' accomplishment. And Big E, he can't really do anything because he's on the other brand. So the night before, or 2 nights before the actual scheduled match between Big E and Roman Reigns, WWE Champion versus Universal Champion, Big E comes to Xavier Woods' defense, and Roman kind of begs off, leading into Survivor Series, where Roman Reigns and Big E have a match, but the problem is Roman was on such a high as Universal Champion, and Brock Lesnar just came back, giving us the tease of, okay, this is going to be the WrestleMania match of Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Nobody thought that Big E had a fighting chance against Roman Reigns. So the crowd in Brooklyn was fairly, I wouldn't want to say silent, but they were kind of on the border of uninterested. And that really did hurt Big E's run. At this point, we're 2 months into Big E's WWE Championship run, and the common theme of it all is Big E is not the main character of this run. And when you're the champion, when you're the top champion of a brand, you should be treated as such. It's almost like Arrow starred Felicity Smoke rather than Oliver Queen or the Green Arrow. We actually did see that in season 4 of Arrow, but I'm not gonna. I get angry talking about Arrow season 4, so I'm just gonna put the kibosh on that right now. So after Survivor Series, now we could start focusing on the WWE Champion Big E, right? Alright, kind of. So remember, Seth Rollins won the number 1 contendership in a ladder match a couple weeks prior. I think about a little over a month at this point. They're just building him up as the number 1 contender. And now we could start building this issue between Seth Rollins and Big E. But now we're throwing Kevin Owens into the mix. And now the story's becoming about Kevin Owens. Once Kevin Owens is introduced into the story, Big E and Kevin Owens have a match, and Seth Rollins talked to Kevin Owens the segment before saying, hey, I'll help you win this match. And Kevin Owens is like, no, I don't need your help. So, of course, during the end of the match, Seth Rollins punches Big E in the face, and Kevin Owens has a bird's eye view of it. He sees it clear as day. But instead of ridiculing Seth Rollins, saying, I don't need your help, he goes for the pin on Big E. But then Big E reverses the pin into a crucifix pin and beats Kevin Owens. Big E's obviously ticked off because he sees the replays of Kevin Owens in full view of Seth Rollins decking him, and Kevin Owens trying to take advantage. And Kevin Owens is like, oh, Seth Rollins, you dastardly man, you. I'm challenging you to a match next week. And he's like, Big E, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to take advantage of a situation. Of course, Kevin Owens at this time is known to be less than trustworthy. So Big E hits Kevin Owens with the big ending. And that's how Raw gets off the air. And this is a good story of Kevin Owens repenting for his past sins, of being a bad guy, of being a villain. He's a good guy now, and now there are several segments of him talking to the good guys and faces on the roster saying, I'm a good friend, right? And people aren't really giving him a solidified yes answer. So Kevin Owens eventually turns on Big E, goes crazy, turns villainous once again. And this is the pattern that's been happening with Big E's championship run. You see now, the story is more towards Kevin Owens than it is Big E. Kevin Owens is the one changing in this storyline. Big E is still staying constant. We're not seeing any development from Big E in this position. When usually when you win a championship, it's about how the title affects you and affects the people around you. And right now, the only one benefiting from this title right now is Kevin Owens, because now his character has dramatically shifted while Big E has largely stayed the same without little to no character progression. He's getting wins over Chad Gable, Austin Theory, but those are still relatively newer stars to the singles audience. And with the main eventers that Big E has faced, the only one he's gotten a solidified win over is Bobby Lashley. Other than that, the story is very good for Kevin Owens. And it gives Big E a strong opponent if they allow him to dive deeper into this story. And they do. Big E defeats Kevin Owens. He defeats Kevin Owens in a cage match. But we're still putting this Seth Rollins #1 contendership story on the back burner. It's then announced at day one, it's going to be Big E defending the WWE Championship against Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins is getting his championship opportunity about 2 months later after he won it. I don't have a problem with it. It's just they didn't have a show or a premium live event in December, so they moved it to January 1st for their first day one show. Makes sense to me. You want a big attraction there. But now the story is every week Big E is facing somebody, and if they beat Big E, they get inserted into that WWE Championship picture. So Kevin Owens defeats Big E by disqualification. Even though he didn't pin or submit Big E, he's in that championship match. Bobby Lashley then returns and beats Big E thanks to interference from Rollins, Owens, MVP. And now he gets inserted into that championship picture. So now we have a fatal four-way match for the WWE Championship. Or do we? Because another championship match that was supposed to happen that day of Roman Reigns defending the Universal Championship against Brock Lesnar is changed because Roman Reigns tests positive for COVID. Well, you're not just going to cancel a match with Brock Lesnar in it. You got to have Brock Lesnar on the show. So Brock Lesnar is then inserted into the WWE Championship match. Oh boy. So the match happens. It's a fun little brawl. It doesn't last 10 minutes. I feel like these guys could go on way longer if they wanted to. But Brock Lesnar matches are usually short. And Brock Lesnar F5s Big E for the win, ending Big E's WWE Championship run. And Big E's run ends at 110 days, so about 4 months. Now, I have my opinions on Big E's championship run, but let me pull up a quote what Big E thought of his WWE Championship run and how it was handled. This is from Superstar Crossover with Josh Martinez. When asked if he would do anything differently to his WWE title reign, Big E said, "There are several things I would do differently. My focus really is just on performing. I do the best I can. I wish it would have lasted longer and we would have had a period to produce more dynamic things. It's difficult to latch on to a new champion when, within the first month, they have multiple losses on television. We can go down this path. I appreciate it, genuinely. The people who support me and wanted better for me. I also want better for myself, and I'll leave it there." So I was curious. Like I mentioned before on the podcast, when Big E lost twice in one night, I wanted to see how much Big E's win record was. Now, a lot of people say in wrestling, wins and losses don't matter, but when you're the WWE champion, they certainly do. So I looked up, and Big E's singles record was 7-5. His tag team record was 6-3, and he had 1 no contest. And he had 21 matches, televised matches, in the 110 days he was as champion. I added all those matches up, and his win rate was 59%. So just about a little over half, which isn't good when you're supposed to be the face of a brand. For comparison, I looked up Drew McIntyre's WWE Championship run for his first title reign. And he was in a similar position to Big E, where he was supposed to be the main good guy, the main face of WWE Raw. So he had 22 total matches, so 1 over Big E. But his singles record was 17-1. His tag team record was 1-2 with 1 no contest. Add all those up, and it's an 81% win rate. So much different. He was booked a lot cleaner and a lot better than Big E. But alright, that's a little bit of an asterisk since that was happening during COVID time and most of his solo matches were, just kind of filler or feeder, what have you. So I went further back and took Kofi Kingston, who was Big E's New Day buddy, and his WWE Championship run. Even though his title reign lasted longer, 180 days, I calculated, and in his singles record, he went 16-2. Tag team was 9-4, and no contests were 2. No contests meaning, the match didn't finish. With 33 total matches, his win rate was 75%. 75%. So, what happened with Big E's championship run? Why did it fall off so badly? And there are a couple of factors. A couple of them I mentioned during the podcast, but I'm just going to combine all my thoughts here for the end. Big E was never the center of a championship storyline. After his interaction with Bobby Lashley, when he defeated Lashley for the championship and then retained against him a couple weeks later in a cage match, Big E was never really the prime focus of WWE television. There was always something going on. Brock versus Roman at Crown Jewel was overshadowing Big E's WWE Championship run. The title picture had so many different challengers that Big E just kind of got lost in the shuffle, and there was a lack of development to bring Big E his own personality, have his own personality shine through during this whole period of time. Because when you're focusing on Kevin Owens' new character change, when you're focusing on developing Seth Rollins as the main villain, the main bad guy of a show, and you're not focusing much on your champion, that makes your champion the less visible to your brand. Also, his first singles feud post Bobby Lashley being Drew McIntyre with good guy versus good guy, and both of them don't necessarily have that momentum to pull that mega match off when Drew McIntyre has kind of been pushed to the sidelines because during Bobby Lashley's reign, he lost a match where he couldn't challenge for the WWE Championship. It's a fresh new matchup, but the momentum isn't really there because Drew McIntyre is moving to a different brand, so a lot of people are saying, all right, he's not going to win the championship. This is a championship match for the sake of a championship match. And of course, the draft also hindered things too, because we weren't sure what the title picture was going to be with Big E as WWE Champion. And there was a promo where someone said, I forget who, but I wrote it down in my notes here, this ain't Mount Rushmore. And that's exactly what Raw became. Instead of it being Big E and his reign, it became Mount Rushmore with all these different faces and characters where the champion, arguably, is the third or fourth most interesting person in his own story. And that should never be. After Big E dropped the WWE Championship, he didn't get his rematch against Brock Lesnar, which boggles my mind, but they didn't have plans for that. They had plans for Brock and Bobby Lashley after, and Big E then lost to Seth Rollins on the next episode of Raw, and then after that, they quietly moved Big E to SmackDown, where he started teaming with Kofi Kingston because Xavier Woods was hurt. And it was just more or less the same before he broke out into his singles role. And it was a major disappointment because you have this guy who, for a long time, a lot of people pegged as a person you could point to of saying, this is a homegrown star that WWE made themselves and got the crowd behind him despite not having a following on the independent circuit This is their own homegrown star. And he got very close to being let go after that first Intercontinental Championship reign. And he built his way back up with help from the New Day to find that personality that people can connect with. And he was rewarded. He was given opportunity with the Intercontinental Championship after that. Then the Money in the Bank. Then the WWE Championship. But those accomplishments are only as great if you have the creative push behind them. And it seemed at this point, WWE creative, maybe intentionally, maybe not. I don't think it was intentional at all. But the creative was focused on other things when arguably the biggest focus should be the WWE Championship. Imagine if John Cena during his prime was WWE Champion. And they were like, all right, what do we got for this guy, this guy, this guy? And Cena is the fifth person that you're mentioning. That he's not the next face. With Big E, he wasn't a priority, even though he was WWE Champion. And that is such a weird thing to me. And he got lost in the shuffle as WWE Champion. It's like Big E said. He wished he could hold it on longer, and he wished he could do more dynamic things with it. And I am in full agreement here. Big E didn't do anything wrong during this run. His matches were always solid. He got great reactions. It's just the lack of thought and creative. And it goes back to when they kind of rushed in the whole cash-in situation. Just because it was football season, because AEW had a better demo, even though this is just speculation on my part. But there were a lot of factors that weren't well thought through enough that would push Big E to the next level. And that's what it is. It felt like it was the right guy, wrong place, wrong time. Like I said in the beginning. And unfortunately, Big E didn't get a chance to do that. As of press time, Big E is still out. He suffered a broken neck on SmackDown with fractures to his C1 vertebrae and C6 vertebrae, but no ligament or spinal cord damage. He also said it wouldn't require any surgery for this injury, and he thanked everybody for their concern. And he said around the 1 year mark, that's when he'll go in for his next test of his neck and see if he could get back in the ring. But as of now, it's been a little over a year. We haven't heard any news of that as of now. Mostly because Big E, when he was asked about it around the 1 year mark, he said he didn't schedule his doctor's appointment. So we're still waiting word on it as time of this recording. And something that Big E is doing, which I think is great for him and great for the company, is he is a part of WWE tryouts with college athletes. And that is, in my opinion, if Big E cannot work any longer as a wrestler, I think him being sort of a college recruit for WWE is a perfect role for him, because he was recruited basically out of college after his football career was over in college. He got signed by WWE. If anybody is the poster boy for being signed right out of college into WWE with little to no experience and succeeding, he's the guy you want. And if Big E can't wrestle anymore, which would be sad because he was a very, and is a very charismatic guy. Talking in past tense like he's retired. He's not retired. Nothing is set in stone yet. But I would like to see Big E get back in the ring only if it is safe for him to do, as relatively safe as you can be in the ring. I wouldn't want to see him doing that diving spear off the apron because, geez, that looks scary. Like, I'm surprised he didn't break his neck before then with how dangerous these spears look, and him landing on his head almost. But overall, Big E's singles career, if you put it in a bubble of what he accomplished during that time, the Intercontinental Championship, Money in the Bank, WWE Champion, they're very good accomplishments, and I'm happy that Big E accomplished being WWE Champion. But the follow-up after it, that's the most disappointing to me. There was no follow-up and no development of Big E as a character that happened during this time. And I wish, if Big E is cleared, that he can develop more as that character that I know he can be. Because he's not just the goofy big man. He can be very dynamic. He can be very serious, and he could carry a main event program if given the opportunity. It's unfortunate that Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns were so heavily hyped at that time, even if they were on the other brand, that there was more focus put on their programs than Big E's programs. And he never really got that solidified main event win over that established name. Like that long time main eventer, like a Randy Orton, like a Roman Reigns, like a Brock Lesnar, like a Seth Rollins. He never really got that moment. And I think that's what would have been the biggest difference in his championship run, is if he got that moment. But that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow me on Instagram or on the Twitter at Retold Richie. You could follow me on the TikTok at The One Retold Richie. That handle might change soon. I will keep you posted. But anyway, that has been Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am Richie Mars. Thank you for joining me as always. And I'll see you next time. TTFN, ta-ta for now.